Over the last 5 seasons, the 5 best NFL teams by regular season record have been the Patriots, the Broncos, the Packers, the Seahawks, and the Bengals. That also represents the last 3 Super Bowl champions. Dan, you've looked at the last 8 drafts, compiled all sorts of data. What do these teams do well on, let's say, draft day number 1 in the first round?
Noticeably, it is defense. The focus has been defense. Of these 5 best teams, as compared to the league average, in fact, the Patriots went 6 of 7 defensive players with their past 7 first-round picks. And then offensively, it's been line over offensive skill, which is easy to say when you have a quarterback, but they also didn't fall into the trap of, oh, we've got a good quarterback. We've got to get him a star receiver. We've got to get him a star running back.
Yeah, not a lot of the best teams are built around a running back that they've drafted in the first round. That makes sense.
In fact, 0 combined offensive skill picks for the Patriots, the Packers, and the Seahawks in that span since 2008.
Yeah, having that franchise quarterback really does make things a lot easier. But outside of the first round, let's move into include the second day, rounds 1, 2, and 3. What are some of the trends you see with those teams?
Interestingly enough, it flips a little bit. Offensive line becomes more prevalent than offensive skill for these 5 best teams as it relates to the league average. And it's interesting. It seems to say that the drop-off is more severe between elite offensive linemen and elite skill players, that there's a deeper pool of really good skill players. You can wait till the 2nd or 3rd round to take a really good tight end, a really good running back, a really good receiver. In fact, the Broncos have done it the most, and they've grabbed a lot of good players in that span. Demaryius Thomas, obviously, first-round pick, but Eric Decker, Ronnie Hillman, Brock Osweiler, even Eddie Royal, a contributor for a long time. So they've done well.
Yeah, I can think off the top of my head across the NFL, tons of good wide receivers taken in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, but not a ton of like super talented all-pro tackles taken outside the first round.
True, and defensively, the Patriots still take more than anybody of those top 5 teams. They themselves have 9 more picks than the average NFL team does in those top 3 rounds. And interestingly enough, the Seahawks, 5 fewer.
In rounds 1 through 3. I think that's going to change in the later rounds of the draft. But for more on the Seahawks scouting and drafting process, let's go to Josh Norris of NBCSports.com.
With all the talk of these first-round picks, I want to see how many first-round picks were on these NFL rosters. The Broncos have 9, the Bengals have 7, Patriots and Packers both have 6. Then there's the Seahawks, just 1, Earl Thomas. So the question is, how can the Seahawks stay competitive with just 1 first-round pick on their rosters? Because they stick to their process. That sounds simple, but a lot of teams don't. And 2 aspects of that process. One is they only draft corners with 32+ inch arms. That's a rare trait to find at that position. Only 7 or 8 corners have that in each draft. Then they have a certain athletic profile that they go for with offensive linemen. And the goal of this is to decrease the talent pool that you evaluate from, theoretically improving your evaluations, and that allows them to find viable starters in the later rounds.
Thanks to Josh for that extra insight. For more of his outstanding work, check out RotoWorld on NBCSports.com. The Seahawks thrive on that final day of the draft. What other trends do you see rounds 4 through 7 with these best teams?
Yeah, so they had 51 total picks over that span, more than any of the best teams, and they love defense. I know you're shocked to hear that.
Yes.
They go after defensive line and defensive backs a ton. The Bengals actually go offensive skill more than any of the best teams, especially as it relates to the NFL average, but generally it's a little bit more defense later on, and the best teams tend to look at line play. They sort of look at offensive and defensive linemen like, these are guys we can mold, and perhaps don't see the difference between 6th, 7th round offensive skill players and undrafted free agent offensive skill players.
I think one thing that we have to acknowledge here with these later round picks and finding the diamonds in the rough, that a lot of the credit for developing these players goes to the coaches. You have to have faith in the coach to develop these physical specimens into the star players that they become. It's not just like Richard Sherman wasn't necessarily a sure thing. He was taught how to be an all-pro quarterback.
So the overarching lesson here, get more picks, because winning consistently means cheap, quality, deep talent, which you can really get 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Go defense early because it's just harder. Get the players that are better at the harder thing to do. And then offensive skill-wise, it's a deep pool generally if you go into the 2nd or 3rd round. Be smart about value. I think that's the lesson here.
Don't use a first rounder on an offensive skill pick unless you need a quarterback.
Unless you need a quarterback.
There you go. That's what the best teams in the NFL do well on draft weekend. Stick around next week. We're going to look at the worst teams.
Yes.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube show. Make sure you give us that like button and also leave a comment below. We'll maybe respond to you.
And you know what? If you really liked us, throw us a subscribe. We got all sorts of premium, juicy, hot, sizzling content for you.
You don't have to watch his shows.
You can.